The Valorian Empire had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. They had conquered planets, destroyed armies, and built cities that floated among the clouds of gas giants. Their power was absolute. Their word was law across 100 star systems. And yet, for all their might, they could not solve one simple problem. The beast would not obey. Emperor Zala stood before the viewing window of the containment chamber, his forearms crossed over his chest. His silver skin caught the light of the artificial sun inside the habitat. Behind him, a dozen advisors waited in nervous silence. None of them wanted to speak first. None of them wanted to deliver more bad news. "How many is that now?" the Emperor asked. His voice was soft, but everyone heard the danger in it. 17, Your Majesty," said Prex, the head of the containment facility. He was a young Valorian with pale blue markings on his face. The Cassari handler lasted the longest, almost 2 full minutes. The Emperor did not turn around. He simply stared through the reinforced glass at the creature inside. The Krivos was magnificent. Even the Emperor, who had seen wonders across the galaxy, had to admit that. The beast was 15 feet long from nose to tail. 6 powerful legs held up a body covered in scales that shifted between black and deep purple. Its head was broad and heavy, almost like the wolves of that primitive planet called Earth. 4 eyes glowed with a light that seemed to come from somewhere deep and ancient. The creature's name was Vorith. He was the last of his kind. 300 years ago, the Valorian fleet had conquered the Krivos' homeworld. It had been a brutal campaign. The Krivos were not intelligent enough to build cities or ships, but they were smart enough to hunt in packs and bring down warships with their claws and their strange ability to disrupt energy fields. The Valorians had won, but at great cost. They had wiped out the entire species except for 1 young male, captured as a trophy for the Emperor of that era. Vorith had been passed down through generations of emperors. He did not age like normal creatures. Something in his biology made him nearly immortal, and something in his mind made him hate every being who came near him. "He has not eaten in 12 days, Prex continued, reading from his data pad. "His aggression levels are at maximum. The medical team believes he is choosing to die rather than submit." Emperor Zala finally turned, his eyes, dark as a void between stars, fixed on his advisor. "Then find someone he will not kill. I do not care if you have to search every world in the Empire. That creature is a symbol of Valorian conquest. If he dies, it will be seen as weakness." Prex bowed low. "We have tried every species known to us, Your Majesty. Valorians, Cassari, Drenth, Molochs, even the machine beings of Sector 9. Nothing works. He attacks everything. Then find something new." The meeting ended. The advisors scattered to their tasks. And Prex was left alone with an impossible problem. It was 3 days later when the answer arrived, though Prex did not recognize it first. A small human vessel had docked at the Imperial Station. Humans were new to the galactic community. Their planet, Earth, had only discovered faster-than-light travel 20 years ago. They were considered primitive by most standards. Their bodies were soft. They had no natural weapons. They could not breathe underwater or survive in vacuum. By all measures, they should have been conquered and forgotten like 1,000 other weak species. But there was something strange about humans. They had a talent for surviving. They adapted. They made friends in unexpected places. And, most puzzling of all, they seemed genuinely like other species, not as servants or tools, but as equals. The human diplomatic team was led by a woman named Katie Marsh. She was small by Valorian standards, with brown hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had come to negotiate trade agreements and establish an embassy. She had not expected to be summoned to the Imperial Palace. "You want us to do what?" she asked, sitting across from Prex in a meeting room that could have held 100 humans. "We need someone to handle the Emperor's Krivos," Prex explained. "All our attempts have failed. We thought perhaps a new species might have better luck." Katie shook her head. "We are diplomats, not animal trainers. I do not see how we could help." But behind her, one of her team members raised his hand. He was a tall man with messy brown hair and a friendly face. His name was Danny Cole, and his official title was Xenobiological Liaison. In simpler words, he was the person who dealt with alien animals. Actually, Danny said, I would like to try. Katie turned to look at him. Danny, you read the reports. That creature has killed 17 trained handlers. Professionals. Experts. You are a veterinarian. Veterinary technician. Danny corrected with a small smile. And, yeah, I read the reports. That is exactly why I want to try. Katie frowned. Explain. Danny leaned forward in his chair. Every handler they sent tried to control the creature. Dominate it. Break its will. That is how the Valorians do things. Dominance and submission. He shook his head. But that does not work with every animal. Some animals, especially the smart ones, will fight until they die rather than submit. You cannot beat the wild out of them. You have to earn their trust. Prex listened with growing interest. And you believe you can earn the trust of Krivos? A creature that has killed every being who entered its territory. Danny shrugged. I grew up on a ranch in Montana. I have worked with wolves, bears, wild horses, and one really angry emu that chased me across a field when I was 12. He smiled at the memory. The thing is, every animal wants the same basic things. Safety, food, respect. If you can provide those things, you can build a relationship. This is not an Earth animal. Prex said, it is an apex predator from a death world. It can tear through starship armor with its claws. So it is a big, scary animal instead of small, scary animal, Danny said. The principles are the same. Let me try. What is the worst that could happen? You could die. Danny nodded. True. But if I do not try, the Krivos will die anyway. And that would be a shame. The last of his kind, killed by loneliness and stubbornness. He looked at the Valorian with calm, steady eyes. I have seen that happen to animals back home. Creatures locked in cages, surrounded by people who do not understand them, slowly giving up on life. I could not save all of them, but I saved some. Let me try to save this one. Katie looked at her team member for a long moment. Then she sighed. If you die, I will have to fill out so much paperwork. Danny grinned. I will try to stay alive, then that. And so it was decided. The next morning, a human would enter the chamber of the Emperor's Beast. The Valorians expected another death. They prepared medical teams and body retrieval units. They set up recording devices to document the failure. None of them expected what would actually happen. The containment chamber was the size of a small forest. The Valorians had built it to look like the Krivos' homeworld, or at least their best guess of what that world had looked like before they burned it. Crystal trees rose toward an artificial sky. Rivers of thick, silver liquid wound between rocks that glowed with inner heat. Strange plants with leaves like glass caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. It was beautiful in a strange, alien way, but it was also a prison. Danny stood at the entrance, looking through the reinforced barrier. Somewhere in that artificial wilderness, Vorth was waiting. The beast had sensors on him that tracked his location at all times. Right now, he was in the center of the habitat, curled up in a nest of broken equipment and torn fabric. The previous handlers wore protective suits, Prex said, standing beside Danny. The Valorian held a data pad that showed vital signs and threat assessments. I strongly recommend you do the same. The suit will not stop a direct attack, but it might give you a few extra seconds to escape. Danny shook his head. No suit. That is extremely unwise. Maybe. Danny picked up his small bag and slung it over his shoulder. But animals can smell fear. They can sense when you are hiding behind something. If I go in there wrapped in armor, Vorth will know I am scared of him. He will know I see him as a threat. That is not how you start a friendship. Prex did not understand. Friendship was not a concept the Valorians valued highly. Power, respect, dominance, these were the pillars of their society. You did not befriend a beast. You controlled it. But the Valorian way had failed 17 times. Perhaps it was time to try something different. Very well, Prex said. The emergency extraction team is standing by. If the creature attacks, we will attempt to retrieve your body. How comforting, Danny said with a dry smile. Open the door. The barrier slid open with a soft hiss. Danny stepped through, and the barrier closed behind him. He was alone now, alone with the most dangerous creature in the Empire. The habitat was warm and humid. Strange sounds filled the air, recordings of wildlife from a dead world. Danny walked slowly, following the path that led toward the center. He did not try to hide. He did not move like a predator or a prey animal. He walked like someone taking a pleasant stroll through a park. In the viewing gallery above, dozens of Valorian scientists and officials watched through screens and sensors. They whispered among themselves, making bets on how long the human would last. The current record was 4 minutes. Most expected Danny to die faster than that. Danny found a clearing near a stream of silver liquid. He could see signs of the beast everywhere. Claw marks on the crystal trees. Patches of disturbed earth. The faint smell of something wild and ancient. And then he saw Vorith. The Krivos emerged from behind a cluster of rocks. He moved slowly, each of his 6 legs placing carefully on the ground. His scales rippled with colors, black and purple and hints of red. His 4 eyes fixed on Danny with an intensity that would have made most beings run. Danny did not run. He sat down. Right there, in the middle of the clearing, Danny sat down cross-legged on the ground. He opened his bag and pulled out a wrapped sandwich. Then he began to eat. In the viewing gallery, Prex leaned forward. What is he doing? No one had an answer. Vorith stopped about 30 feet away. His massive head tilted to one side, like a confused dog. This was not how prey behaved. Prey ran. Prey screamed. Prey tried to fight. This small, soft creature was sitting on the ground and eating. A low growl rumbled from the beast's throat. The sound was deep enough to shake the ground. Danny felt in his chest, in his bones. It was a warning, a threat, a promise of violence. Danny looked up from his sandwich. "Hey there, big guy," he said in a calm, friendly voice. "You must be Vorith. I am Danny. Nice to meet you." The growl grew louder. Danny nodded, as if the beast had said something meaningful. "Yeah, I get it. You do not like visitors. Fair enough. I am not here to bother you. I am just here to eat my lunch." He took another bite. "You know, they told me you have not eaten in almost 2 weeks. That is not good. Buddy, you must be hungry." He reached into his bag and pulled out a sealed container. Inside was real meat, replicated but close enough to the genuine thing. Danny had spent hours researching Krivos' biology to find something that might appeal to the creature's appetite. He opened the container and tossed a piece of meat onto the ground between them. Vorith's nostrils flared. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, one after another. The growling stopped. "Go ahead," Danny said. "It is for you. No tricks, no poison, no traps. Just food." For a long moment, nothing happened. The beast stared at the meat. Then he stared at Danny. Then he stared at the meat again. Danny went back to his sandwich. Time passed. Minutes turned into an hour. Then 2 hours. Then 3. Danny finished his sandwich, drank some water, and pulled out a small book from his bag. He began to read, occasionally glancing up at Vorith, but never staring directly. The scientists in the viewing gallery were amazed. No one had ever lasted this long. And more importantly, the beast was not attacking. He was not even threatening anymore. He was just watching the human with those 4 strange eyes. "His stress hormones are dropping," one scientist reported, checking the sensor data. "Aggression markers are declining. This is unprecedented." Prex said nothing. He just watched. As the 3rd hour ended, Danny closed his book and stood up slowly. He stretched his arms and yawned. "Well, buddy, I should probably go. They only gave me permission for 3 hours today." He smiled at the beast. "But I will come back tomorrow. And the day after that. And every day until you decide I am okay." He turned and walked toward the exit. Behind him, Vorith watched without moving. Danny was almost at the barrier when he heard it, a soft, wet sound. He turned back. Vorth was eating the meat. A warmth spread through Danny's chest. He did not smile or cheer or make any sudden movements. He just nodded once, as if this was exactly what he had expected. "Good boy," he said quietly. "See you tomorrow." He stepped to the barrier, and the door closed behind him. In the viewing gallery, the Valorians erupted into confused chatter. What had just happened? How had the humans survived? Why had the beast not attacked? Prex pushed through the crowd and met Danny in the hallway. "That was remarkable," the Valorian said. "How did you know he would not kill you?" Danny shrugged. "I did not know, but I had a feeling. See, the thing about angry animals is that they are usually not really angry. They're scared or hurt or lonely. Vorth has been treated like a monster for 300 years. Everyone who comes near him wants to control him. Noah's ever just sat with him and treated him like a living being." He looked back at the closed door. He is not a monster. He is just alone. And nobody should have to be alone. Danny returned the next day, just as he had promised. And the day after that, and the day after that, every morning, he would enter the containment chamber with his small bag. He would find a comfortable spot, usually the same clearing near the silver stream. He would sit down, eat his lunch, read his book, and talk. He talked about everything. He told Vorth about Earth, about the blue skies and the green forests and the mountains that touched the clouds. He talked about Montana, where he had grown up. He described the ranch where his family had raised horses and cattle. He told stories about the animals he had worked with over the years. "There was this one wolf," Danny said on the 5th day, leaning back against a crystal tree. Vorth was closer now, only about 15 feet away. Her name was Luna. She had been caught in a trap when she was young, and her back leg never healed right. People said she was too wild to save, too aggressive, too broken. Vorth's ears, or the things that looked like ears, twitched slightly. He was listening. "I spent 3 months with her," Danny continued. "Every day, I would sit near her enclosure and just talk. I did not try to touch her or train her or make her do anything. I just let her get used to me. And one day, she walked right up the fence and put her nose against my hand." He smiled at the memory. She lived another 8 years after that. Not in the wild. She could not survive there with her leg. But in a sanctuary where she had space to run and other wolves to be with. She was happy. Vorth made a low sound in his throat. It was not a growl. It was something softer, almost curious. "I know you cannot go home," Danny said, his voice growing quiet. "Your home is gone. And I am sorry about that. I am sorry for what was done to your people." He looked directly at those 4 glowing eyes. "But being alive does not have to be a punishment. You can still have good days. You can still feel the sun on your face and the wind in your fur, or scales, whatever." Days turned into weeks. The Valorian scientists continued to monitor everything, filling reports with data they did not fully understand. The beast's health was improving. He was eating regularly now, always the food that Danny brought. His stress hormones had dropped to levels never recorded before. He was not trying to break out of the containment chamber anymore. But the most remarkable changes were the small ones. On day 12, Vorth moved closer while Danny was reading. He settled down only 10 feet away, his massive body curled like a cat in a sunbeam. On day 15, Danny dropped his book by accident. Vorth picked it up in his mouth, very gently, and placed it back near the human's feet. On day 18, Danny fell asleep in the clearing. He woke up 3 hours later to find Vorth lying beside him, close enough to touch, guarding him from the imaginary dangers of the habitat. And on day 19, something magical happened. Danny was sitting in his usual spot, telling a story about his childhood dog. Biscuit had been a stubborn golden retriever who refused to learn any commands, but somehow always knew when Danny was sad and needed company. "He would just sit next to me," Danny said, "not doing anything special. Just being there. That is all I needed sometimes. Just someone to be there." Vorth was only 5 feet away now. His great head rested on his front paws, his 4 eyes half closed in relaxation. Without really thinking about it, Danny extended his hand. Palm up, fingers relaxed. Not reaching out, not grabbing, just offering. "You know," he said softly, "you do not have to be alone anymore either." Vorth opened his eyes. He stared at the hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, carefully, he rose to his feet and walked the last few steps. His head was enormous up close. Those 4 eyes held an intelligence that was deep and ancient and somehow sad. The scales on his snout were smooth and warm when they pressed against Danny's palm. "Hey there," Danny whispered. "Hey, buddy." He began to scratch gently behind what he thought were ears. The scales, they were softer, more flexible. Vorth's eyes closed completely, and then the beast began to purr. It was a deep sound, like an engine running far away. It vibrated through the ground and up through Danny's body. It was the sound of contentment, the sound of peace. "Who is a good boy?" Danny murmured, both hands now scratching and rubbing the massive head. "Yeah, you are. You are a good boy." In the viewing gallery, the scientists went silent. Prex gripped the railing so hard his knuckles turned white. No one could believe what they were seeing. The most dangerous creature in the Empire. The beast that had killed 17 handlers. The untamable monster. He was getting belly rubs. Vorth had rolled over onto his back, all 6 legs in the air, his tail sweeping across the ground. Danny was laughing, both hands buried in the scales of the creature's stomach, scratching and rubbing while Vorth made happy sounds that shook the crystal trees. "You big goofball," Danny said through his laughter. "You are not scary at all. You are just a giant puppy." Prex turned to the lead scientist. "Are you recording this?" "Every second," the scientist confirmed. "But I do not understand it. The Krivos should not be capable of this behavior. Our research suggested they were purely aggressive predators." "Perhaps your research was wrong," Prex said quietly. When Danny finally left the chamber that day, Vorth followed him to the barrier. The beast made a low, mournful sound as the door closed between them. "I will be back tomorrow," Danny promised through the glass. "I always come back." The news spread quickly through the Imperial station. The human had done the impossible. The beast was tamed. Or rather, as Danny insisted on saying, the beast had made a friend. But not everyone was pleased. Emperor Zalith received the report in his throne room. He watched the recordings with an expression that was hard to read. When they ended, he spoke only one word: "Interesting." His advisors waited for more, but the Emperor said nothing else. He simply sat on his throne, thinking thoughts that no one else could guess. In her quarters on the human vessel, Katie Marsh received a message. The Emperor had requested a formal demonstration. The entire Imperial court would attend. She found Danny in the mess hall, eating dinner and sketching pictures of Vorth in a notebook. "We have a problem," she said. Danny looked up. "What kind of problem?" "The Emperor wants to see what you have done. He wants you to show off the beast in front of everyone." Danny's face fell. "That is not how this works. Vorth is not a trick. He is not a show. He is my friend." "I know," Katie said, "but this is politics. The Emperor needs to see results. If you refuse, it could damage everything we have built here." Danny was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. "Fine. But we do it my way. No chance. No weapons. No kajis." He looked at her with determination in his eyes. "If they want to see what Vorth can do, I will show them. But I will show them who he really is. Not a monster. Not a weapon." "Then what?" Danny smiled slightly. "A good boy." The grand arena of the Imperial Palace was the largest enclosed space in the Valorian Empire. It had been built 5,000 years ago to host gladiatorial combat, political executions, and the entertainment of emperors. The ceiling arched so high above that clouds sometimes formed beneath it. The seats rose in endless tiers, filled today with the most powerful beings in the known galaxy. There were Valorians in their finest robes, silver skin gleaming with jewelry and rank markers. There were Kasari diplomats with their 4 arms and jeweled eyes. Drenth warriors stood in the corners, their stone-like bodies completely still. Representatives from 100 worlds had come to witness this moment, and at the highest point of the arena, on a throne carved from a single piece of black crystal, sat Emperor Zalith. Danny stood in the center of the arena floor, feeling very small. He wore simple clothes, brown pants, a green jacket, comfortable boots, no armor, no weapons, no protective equipment of any kind. The Valorian officials had begged him to wear at least a basic shield generator. He had refused. Katie Marsh sat in the human delegation section, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had turned white. The other members of her team were equally nervous. If this went wrong, it would not just be Danny who suffered. Earth's entire relationship with the Empire could collapse. The demonstration will begin, announced a booming voice that echoed through the arena. Release the beast. At the far end of the arena, massive doors began to open. The sound of ancient mechanisms filled the air. Behind those doors was a temporary enclosure that had been set up to hold Vorith. He had been transported there early that morning, sedated and confused. Danny had not been allowed to see him since yesterday. He did not know what state the Krivos would be in. Would Vorith remember their friendship? Or would the stress of the situation bring back all his old fear and rage? The doors opened fully and Vorith emerged. The crowd gasped. Many had never seen a Krivos before. The recordings did not do justice to his size, his power, his terrible beauty. Those scales caught the light and scattered it like a dark rainbow. Those 4 eyes scanned the arena with intelligence that was unsettling. Vorith's body was tense. His legs were slightly bent, ready to spring. A low growl rumbled from his throat, loud enough to be heard in the highest seats. He looked ready to kill. Danny took a deep breath. Vorith, he called out. His voice was calm and steady, though his heart was pounding. Hey, buddy, over here. The beast's head snapped toward him. Those 4 eyes focused on a small human, standing alone in the middle of the vast space. For a moment, nothing happened. The entire arena held its breath. Then Vorith began to move. He crossed the arena floor with long, powerful strides. Each step made the ground tremble. His claws left marks in stone. His growl grew louder as he approached. In the stands, guards raised their weapons. Katie covered her mouth with her hand. Emperor Zalith leaned forward on his throne, watching with cold curiosity. Danny did not move. He did not run. He did not show fear. That is right, he said as the beast approached. Come here, boy. It is okay. I know this place is scary. All these people staring at you. All this noise. But I am here. And I am not going anywhere. Vorith was 20 feet away. Then 15. Then 10. And then he was there, right in front of Danny, his massive head level with the human's face. His breath was hot and ancient. His eyes held a wild light. Danny smiled. Hey, Vorith, he said softly. I missed you too. He reached up with both hands and began to scratch behind those not-quite ears. The growl stopped. The tension in the beast's body melted away. His eyes half closed in pleasure. And then Vorith knocked Danny flat on his back. The crowd screamed. Guards rushed forward. Katie jumped to her feet. But Danny was laughing. Vorith was on top of him, all 15 feet of deadly predator, licking his face with a tongue that was rough and warm. His tail wagged so hard that it cracked the stone floor. Happy sounds poured from his throat, that deep purring that Danny had come to love. Okay, Danny managed between licks. I get it. You are happy to see me. Calm down, you big goofball. He pushed gently at the beast's head, and Vorith backed off, sitting on his haunches like a well-trained dog. His tail continued to sweep across the floor, his 4 eyes bright with joy. The arena was silent. No one knew what to do. This was not what anyone had expected. Danny got to his feet, brushing off his clothes. He had Krivos saliva in his hair and a huge grin on his face. He looked up at the Emperor's throne. Your Majesty, he called out, his voice carrying through the stillness. This is Vorith. He is not a monster. He is not a weapon. He is a living creature who was taken from his home and locked in a cage for 300 years. Every handler you sent tried to break him. They tried to dominate him with force and fear, and they all failed. He put a hand on Vortha's head, scratching gently. The beast leaned into his touch. I did not try to break him, Danny continued. I just treated him with kindness. I sat with him. I talked to him. I brought him food and did not ask for anything in return. And eventually he decided I was worth trusting. Emperor Zalitha's expression was unreadable. His voice echoed through the arena. You speak boldly for a member of such a young species. Are you suggesting that the Valorian way is wrong? Danny met the Emperor's eyes without fear. I am suggesting that there is more than one way to earn respect. Your empire is built on power and conquest. You take what you want and crush anyone who resists. That works with some creatures, but not all. He looked around at the assembled dignitaries, at the representatives of 100 worlds that had been conquered or threatened into submission. Some beings will die rather than submit. Danny said, you cannot beat the wild out of them. You cannot frighten them into obedience. But you can earn their friendship. You can show them that you see them as equals, not as tools or trophies. And when you do that, when you treat someone with genuine respect and kindness, they will stand beside you by choice. Vorth pressed closer to Danny, his great head resting on the human's shoulder. The message was clear. This bond was real. It was not forced or faked or temporary. Emperor Zalith was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. You are either very brave or very foolish, human. Danny shrugged. Probably both, Your Majesty. A strange sound filled the arena. It took a moment for everyone to realize what it was. The Emperor was laughing. Very well, Zalith said when his laughter faded. You have made your point. The beast is yours. And you have given me something to think about. His eyes swept across the crowd. Perhaps we all have something to think about. Danny bowed slightly. Thank you, Your Majesty. As he walked out of the arena with Vorth by his side, the crowd parted before them. Some faces showed fear. Some showed confusion. But some, Danny noticed, showed something else. Hope. A year had passed since the demonstration in the grand arena. Much had changed in that time. The Valorian Empire was not the same as it had been before. And neither was Danny Cole. He sat in a chamber that had once been a prison and was now a home. The artificial habitat had been redesigned according to his suggestions. The crystal trees were still there and the silver streams, but now there were also comfortable human furniture, soft lighting, and a small library of books that Danny had brought from Earth. Vorth was curled up on a massive cushion that had been made especially for him. His eyes were closed, and that deep purring rumble filled the room. Danny sat beside him, reading a novel and occasionally reaching over to scratch behind the beast's ears. It was a quiet evening, peaceful, the kind of evening that neither of them had known was possible a year ago. A soft chime announced a visitor. Danny looked up as the door opened and Prex entered. The Valorian had become something like a friend over the past months. He often came to visit, to talk, to learn. Am I disturbing you? Prex asked. Never, Danny said with a smile. Vorth, we have company. The Krivos opened one eye, saw that it was Prex, and closed it again. He had grown tolerant of certain Valorians, the ones Danny trusted. He still did not like most of them, but he no longer tried to kill them on sight. Prex sat down in a chair across from Danny. I have news from the Emperor. Good news or bad news? Interesting news. Prex pulled out his datapad. The reforms are spreading faster than anyone expected. The new protocols for handling non-sapient creatures have been adopted across 300 worlds. The mortality rate for animal handlers has dropped by 60%. Danny nodded. This was the project he had been working on ever since the demonstration. The Emperor had asked him to teach Valorians his methods, and Danny had agreed on one condition. The knowledge would be shared freely with everyone who wanted it. It had not been easy. The Valorians were proud. They did not like admitting that a primitive species had figured out something they had missed. But the results spoke of themselves. Creatures that had been considered untamable were now cooperating with their handlers. Aggressive animals were calming down. The old ways of dominance and force were slowly being replaced by patience and trust. There is more, Prex continued. The Emperor has received requests from other species. The Kasari want to learn your techniques. So do the Molochs. Even the Drent have sent a message, though they pretended it was about something else. Danny laughed. The Drent are too proud to ask directly, but they are curious? Exactly. Well, I am happy to teach anyone who wants to learn. That was always the point. Danny looked at Vorth, still purring contentedly on his cushion. Kindness is not a human invention. Every species has a capacity for it. Some just need to be reminded. Prex was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that surprised Danny. You have changed things beyond animal handling. You know, the way we treat conquered worlds, the way we negotiate with new species, even the way we talk to each other within the Empire. It is all shifting. Shifting how? Prex searched for the right words. Valorians have always believed that strength is the only thing that matters. If you are strong, you deserve power. If you are weak, you deserve nothing. But you showed us something different. You walked into a chamber with the most dangerous creature in the Empire, completely defenseless, and you won not through strength but through kindness. He shook his head slowly. It made people think. If kindness could tame the untamable beast, what else could it do? Could it end conflicts that force had failed to end? Could it build alliances that threats had failed to build? Could it create loyalty that was stronger than fear? Danny considered this. I did not set out to change your entire society. I just wanted to help one lonely creature. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest actions. Prex said, You showed us what was possible. The rest is up to us. They talked for a while longer about the reforms, about the challenges, about the future. Eventually, Prex left, and Danny was alone with Vorth again. The human closed his book and looked at the beast beside him. Those four eyes opened and met his gaze. There was understanding there, and trust, and something that might have been love. You know what, buddy? Danny said, scratching behind those ears. I think we did okay. Vorth's tail thumped against a cushion. Later that night, Danny stood on a balcony overlooking the Imperial Station. Stars filled the sky in numbers he still found overwhelming. Billions of lights. Each one a sun with its own planets, its own possibilities. The universe was so vast that it made his head spin. Katie found him there. The human ambassador had changed too over the past year. She was more confident now, more respected. Her mission had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. Earth was no longer seen as a primitive backwater. It was seen as something valuable, something worth learning from. You are thinking deep thoughts, she said, standing beside him. Just wondering how I got here, Danny replied. A year ago, I was a vet tech from Montana. Now I am some kind of interstellar philosopher teaching alien empires about being nice to animals. Katie smiled. Life is strange. It really is. They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Then Katie spoke again. We receive a message from Earth today. They want to know if you're coming home. Danny thought about it. He thought about Montana, about the mountains and the forests and the big sky. He thought about his family, about his friends, about the life he had left behind. Then he thought about Vorth, about the bond they had built, about what would happen to the beast if Danny left. Not yet, he said finally. Maybe someday. But not yet. There's still work to do here. And someone who needs me. Katie nodded as if she had expected this answer. You are a good man, Danny Cole. I am just a guy who likes animals, Danny said with a shrug. I got lucky. But luck had nothing to do with it. Danny had walked into that containment chamber with nothing but patience and kindness, and he had changed everything. He had proven that compassion was not weakness, that empathy was not naivety, that sometimes the softest approach was the strongest. The Valorian Empire would never be the same. And somewhere in the historical records of 1,000 worlds, a simple phrase would be remembered as the moment everything changed. Who was a good boy? Back in the habitat, Vorth slept peacefully. His dreams, if Krivos could dream, were no longer filled with blood and rage and loneliness. They were filled with warmth, with safety, with the voice of a friend. Outside, the stars burned cold and ancient. Empires rose and fell. Wars were fought. Planets were conquered. The universe continued on its endless journey through time and space. But in one small room on an Imperial station, something precious had taken root, a bond between a human and a beast, a friendship that had defied all odds, a reminder that even in the vastness of space, even among species separated by thousands of light years of evolution, kindness was still the most powerful force in the universe. And that was more than enough.